Welcome to Flex Live, which is not live because we are having technical difficulties. So thank you for your patience. But this is where we have real conversations about what's happening and not working or working inside organizations today. And we're going to talk about AI. So AI is everywhere right now. But for most organizations, the biggest challenge is not access to the tools. It's actually figuring out where to start. There's a tendency to overthink it, overbuild it, or for some people, wait until there is a perfect plan in place. In reality, waiting for perfection often just slows people down. So I'm joined today by Kathryn Greenizen from Flex and Patti Rausch, VP of Research and Innovation at NAW. Both of these ladies are not just talking about AI, they are actively implementing it inside their organizations and others today. So, ladies, it's wonderful to have you. And thank you again for your patience with our technical difficulties. Let's get into it. So, before we get into the weeds of AI, I'd love to hear from each of you how you got your journey started with it. What was your first exposure? What was your first experience?
Sure. I, as you announced, I'm the VP of Research and Innovation at NAW, which some people would say, "Wow, she has done policy in the past. She does research. She is a tech person." I am exactly zero of the above. This is the first time that I have any such title and responsibility that involves any sort of technology at all. I come from a background at mission driven organizations where I did before previously I had campaign experience, political campaigns. And then I worked at the Leadership Institute for 14 years, where a majority of my time was spent doing programming and then eventually helping people with their careers. So as far away from any tech centric thing that you can get. But because of my programming responsibilities, when I heard this thing of generative AI come around and Chat GPT just launched, I think it was in the beginning of 2022, I thought, well, I'll just sign up for it and see what it is. And I actually used it first, the way most people do, which was to help me draft things faster. At NAW, we're the National Association of Wholesaler Distributors. So we represent the entirety of the distribution industry. Everything you touch and you see around you has likely gone through a distributor of some sort. So we have every January, we have our executive summit. So it's all of the CEOs and other members of the C suite of these companies that, they go well over $1 billion in annual revenue. They come to Washington, D.C., and they want to learn how to run their businesses better. How do they work on their strategy? How they want to hear from really cool speakers. So in 2023, we had former Vice President Mike Pence as one of our speakers. And we also had a ton of other speakers. It's an event over 3 days. And one of our responsibilities on the programming and event side was to make sure we could get the scripting done. And part of the scripting is bios and introductions and all this stuff. And I thought, what if I could use generative AI to help me write this stuff to take something off of my plate? Because as any busy professional knows, we're like, how do we get more efficient at what we're doing? So I had it drafted and it was fine, right? It worked. I obviously had to edit a bunch of stuff, but it saved me some time in the beginning. And that was the moment that it kind of clicked for me that if I didn't treat generative AI like a search engine, I could use it as a thinking partner. And it was, if it can create me some things, why can't I spar with it a little bit? So I would push back on answers. I would give it more context. And I realized that it was getting sharper a lot faster than I could possibly get on my own. And more importantly, is that as someone with self diagnosed ADHD, I would interrupt other people to try and be a sounding board for me of all of these ideas. Anyone who knows me, they're like, Patti is full of ideas. She's got an idea for everything.
Yes.
One of my Clifton strengths is activator, right? It's activator, communication, positivity, and winning others over. This is in strategy, right? So like the nightmare of I'm ready for you. Let's talk. Well, AI, right? So AI for me was now I can test these things with another entity before I start bothering someone else. So this is when I realized that it wasn't just a productivity tool that can help me draft emails or edit this thing. It was actually something that was going to change how I build strategy within the organization. And it kind of took off from there. I just ran with it and became the AI person within the organization. And because of that, I started to build, etc. And I moved away from programming. And now I am full time doing innovation within the organization and architecting our new research structure so we can use technology and build new tools to create a modern research organization, not use the same old playbook that perhaps other organizations have had. But then I'm also helping the entire distribution industry innovate and advance and not just do continuous improvement, but to really take giant leaps forward so we can be an industry that is like on the cutting edge and really delivering for all of our customers. So it's just a very exciting time for me. And that's kind of how I got into it.
I love that. And knowing you and some of the work that you did previously, and your passion for experimentation and just seeing what clicks, what doesn't click, and helping others, I think AI is the perfect world for you to be in right now. Kathryn, what about you?
Yeah. So my pathway into AI was actually pretty organic. So most of my professional background is in strategy and operations and primarily in consulting. And I think very early in my career, I was really interested in process improvement, process in general, change management, and kind of seeing where organizations get stuck, why they get stuck, and how I can potentially resolve that. And I found that, a lot of the time when you're digging into pain points, inefficient workflows, processes that aren't working, the solution ends up being some sort of technology. And I think over time, increasingly for me, that technology was AI driven. So even before the big Gen AI boom, I had already been implementing AI tools for clients. Obviously, the strength of those and the complexity of those has gotten a lot greater over time. But I think what's great now post Gen AI boom is that, a lot of these things are a lot more accessible. Somebody can, like Patti, go and experiment on their own and see what Gen AI can do for them and what is even possible with AI. Uh, and the tools that were there pre that boom as well have just gotten much more powerful. So yeah, it was a very natural transition. But I think what's been nice for me now is that when I was first implementing AI, the conversations I would have with clients when I was trying to pitch these things was more centered on take a chance, like, you know, try this out. It has a lot of great capability. And now clients come to you and are saying, hey, I want to implement AI. I'm curious about this. I'm a lot more open, which has been great to see as well.
Yeah, I think what's unique for both of you is that you had different paths to AI, but you also were really open-minded about embarking on this journey that you've been taking. And when we talk to clients and when I talk to peers, you get this sense that everybody knows it's happening, but not everyone is as comfortable as both of you are currently. And we're kind of just jumping in with 2 feet and figuring it out. There's this gap between awareness of AI, awareness of the tools, even. Patty, you mentioned everybody kind of jokes about, oh, I'm going to ask ChatGPT this or that or have it book my vacation. But there's that gap between awareness and execution in the workplace. And in many cases, that is driven by fear, whether it's fear of the headlines like AI is going to take my job or am I replacing myself by training this AI tool, but also just what are the risks of doing it? What if something fails? What if AI gets it wrong? And I think those hesitations are really real. A lot of that then is driving this need for certain organizations and leaders to say, I need a fully baked plan, strategy, and it is all figured out before we start. So, where are you guys and your conversations seeing organizations approach AI and where are they getting stuck kind of with the launch?
I'll take this first. Kathryn nailed it where like her background being in that change management side of it. Change management is going to be the most important thing that you really address whenever you're talking about AI. Cause I see people constantly in this strategy trap. It's you want that, like you say, a fully formed AI roadmap before they touch anything. And especially in mission driven organizations, right? We have donors who we wouldn't be able to do anything if it weren't for them. I'm a C6 now, so it's members, but I'll put on my former C3 hat, and it's you have this. You have to be a good steward of their dollars. You
Yes.
don't have time to like develop things. Here's our plan. We're going to execute on it, and we're going to spend these dollars as they come in because donor dollars are not meant to last over years and years and years, right? We have capital campaigns, we have all of these things, and we're going to do it and we're going to go for it. So give me your plan and then let's execute on it. Having this roadmap beforehand, like I get it. you need accountability. You have to have all those things. You don't experiment wildly with the resources. But the problem with that is you can't think your way into an AI strategy. It's like the only thing that you can't do with an AI strategy right now is you can't think your way into it. Is that you have to truly work your way into it. And all the organizations that I see that are moving are the ones who are building a culture around a very small sanctioned bet, like 1 or 2 bets at a time. At NAW, we operate with what I'd call a pilot culture, and it's every single innovative thing that we try and that's from AI to events to new products in general, is that we try to have a defined scope, clear stage gates. And those of you who are familiar with continuous improvement will understand stage gates. This is stuff that my boss, who worked in industry his entire career, had to explain to me about these things. And I latched onto it. I said, this is what I was missing in my career, because we never, like at C3 world, we don't do that. And in campaign world, you don't do that because there's a finite amount of time.
Yes.
At corporate culture, you need to make sure that what your final thing is actually going to be successful, or else you're going to lose a lot of money. So taking that corporate mindset of pilot culture, stage gates, and then having an explicit off ramp of whatever you're doing if it's not working. So it lowers the stakes, which is great. So enough people that they will actually try something, right? Don't worry, we're like, if you fail, it's okay. Like that's part of the plan. And when you do that, when you kind of put that together and let people explicitly know, like, here's the scope, here are the stage gates, and at each gate that we stop at to assess, we have a clear off ramp or a clear move forward plan. And it's okay. We actually encourage, to be honest, so we can move off, and then the learning compounds faster that way, right? People get a little bit more comfortable and they're more willing to really dive headfirst into the whole thing. So that's kind of how we're seeing it here at NAW.
I love what you said about the culture, and I want to dig in on that in just a second. But Kathryn, what are you saying as well?
I'd say I totally agree with Patti regarding the strategy trap. I also think that a lot of organizations I'm seeing are starting tool first instead of problem first. So, we have clients that get excited about a particular platform, or they see a video about something or a new application, or their leadership just feels pressure to do something with AI, period. And so they kind of just jump towards implementing a tool that they may have not explicitly vetted, or they haven't even defined the problem that that tool is supposed to solve. I saw this a lot when Microsoft Copilot hit the market, just because, people are familiar with Microsoft, people feel safe with Microsoft, and those organizations would say, we already use this. Okay, like let's just turn on Copilot. And they had not thought through who actually needs this, what workflows is Copilot going to be supporting? What outcomes do we want from this? What is the ROI? How are we protecting ourselves or actually setting this up appropriately? It was very just flip a switch, let's turn it on. And I think without, establishing the answers to those questions up front, you end up just implementing technology for the sake of implementing it. And that's when, you're creating more confusion. And also I think that's why, we see some of the articles that we do where it's like, oh, these AI implementations are failing, or they aren't generating the value that we expected. And it's just because what triggered it was not, it wasn't the right starting point. I mean, we weren't asking the right questions up front.
Also, a really good point on the tool first. I've heard so many clients say things like, well, we're using Claude org wide, or we're using ChatGPT org wide. We bought an enterprise subscription. And so we've implemented AI. I think you guys both know that that is not an implementation of AI. That's giving everybody another search engine, basically, to work from.
Mhm.
On the culture piece, Patti, you said something really interesting about how at your organization, it's kind of from the top down that we're going to pilot things, we're going to experiment them, we're going to have an offer. One of the things we're seeing with our clients and then just in conversations we're having is that often the AI introduction is actually not from leadership. It's from an employee who's passionate about it. They're using it at home. They just started using it for their job because there wasn't a governance policy or anything in place. So let's talk a little bit about the employee-led innovations at organizations, and then what are the things that leaders can do if they do have employees that are kind of experimenting to foster a culture that you described that you guys have at NA?
you basically just described how I went from programs to innovation. It's let's call it quiet innovation. You don't quite understand that you are innovating in a way that no one else operated. You're just looking for a more efficient way to work. I would say that people who work in events and logistics are the one who they kind of know. Same thing for operations, right? You know every way a little bit about a lot of things within your organization, right? Is that you know how every team operates. If you're in events and programming, it's because you have to know because what they do, because you're going to have speakers from different things. Operations, you know, because you see the entire operation. You have to be familiar with wants and needs. So it's when individuals kind of start there, you're like, I'm going to tinker with this for me, but you know what? I wonder if this could help them too. And so you have people taking it into their own hands. They're trying ChatGPT, they're summarizing notes, drafting communication. It's processing research faster than the tools that they originally had. It's for us, so because I was kind of pushing and I was very open about using AI when people were like keeping it a secret. It's like Ozempic, right? It's like, oh, I'm not on Ozempic. It's like, I've been on Ozempic for 2 years and I love it and I will tell everyone from it, changed my life. It's the same thing with AI, is that AI, user from the beginning, I told everyone, I was like, this is what AI gave me. I want to show you what we can do with AI. I want us to use AI. And it was, whoa, you're like pretty advanced in this while people are starting to catch up. And my boss was like, before you run ahead of everyone, why don't you try to bring people along? And I said, that's good. And Kathryn's nodding because she's like, ooh, you're talking change management now. Like, I understand this. Like, you're speaking my language. And that's kind of what it was, is that when you have your kind of bench team and not necessarily the C-suite, and I'm in management level, but I still was able to, stop by and say, hey, I heard you were doing this and it looks like it's taking a little time. Let's sit down and talk a little bit about what your issue is. And let's brainstorm a little bit to see if AI can help you with this. And I did that with several of my colleagues where they just did not think that AI could help them. They're like, there is not a possibility that this can happen. And I developed this, a system to do it. I call it CHIPS. And it's a challenge, harness, innovate, practice, and share. And that is what we have kind of built our pilot culture around, is that you have to name the challenge and you have to say what success is going to look like. What do you want to change? What do you want to improve? Harness are what resources you have around you. That includes your AI platform. It includes your budget, includes technology needs. It includes the people, your time, how much time do you have? I is innovate. That's when you bring AI into it. That's when you bring the generative part into it and you start to figure out what it is. Then your practice is when you have something that could work, start practicing it. And then if it really does work, then you need to share it within your organization. So we started having these monthly meetings starting the beginning of last year. We call them the chip sessions, and people started to get really into it. And now we have every single person within our organization has used AI. A lot of people use it on a daily basis, and we are encouraged to tell each other, to say, hey, we did this. I want you to know how we did it. So maybe it'll give you an idea. It's embracing something new and not being worried that the people who are not in charge are going to change things. Instead, it's give them a sandbox that they can play in and be comfortable in so they can do it, because they're solving their own pain points. You're not having them come to you with being like, oh my gosh, I can't, like, I'm having trouble with this, or I need more resources for that. It's like, no, instead it's, they might be able to figure it out on their own. You've hired good people. Trust the people who you've hired. Trust your hiring process and, making sure that they fit in the culture. And they're going to prove that the value is faster than any top-down initiative could ever do, because it's what's the value creation that they're doing, to use a management term, but it's let them figure out how to do it and then share across the board. That's how I see it working better. It's a grassroots movement within your organization.
Okay, I love that. The CHIPS framework is fantastic. So we'll definitely be pulling that out as a highlight. But also, sharing with your peers breaks down the barrier of willingness to try. I feel like if you hear it worked for somebody
Yes.
else and you're like, oh, if they're doing it, I can do it. It just creates that sense of comfort that I think a lot of people are still, like we said, a little bit afraid or hesitant to even dabble their foot in the waters. I love that. And it also sounds like you guys have some frameworks in place for governance as well, of just things that you will and won't do with AI. And Kathryn, we've talked about this a lot, that we want to foster cultures of innovation, the chips and the sharing, but also remind people there are some guardrails that you want to put around this from a governance perspective. So what are you seeing on that front?
Yeah, I think the format that Patty is describing is a perfect example of how you can, create those structures and address some of the governance and risk issues without stifling the passion and the enthusiasm and the openness to trying. I think, unmonitored employee-led adoption can create security compliance risks, especially because I find that a lot of people that might be experimenting early with AI don't necessarily understand how it functions, right?
Yes.
Like I've had to explain to people, in my personal life that what they're putting into ChatGPT is training ChatGPT. I'm like, it's your information is not going nowhere. It's not being held for you unless that's what you're paying for. And so I think, creating those guardrails where, the sandbox, using the same analogy, the sandbox has barriers on the outside. So you're playing within there, but you are not putting any sort of information into it that can put your organization at risk, or in the case of, these mission driven orgs, your donors, your members, but also from a process standpoint, making sure that the sharing is incorporated so you don't have five people solving the same problem five different ways, I
It's a
think is
great point.
great. So I'm always happy to encourage the energy. I think in an ideal scenario, employee led is some of the best AI adoption because, you're coming at it from a good culture standpoint, but certainly you have to have the barriers in place so that nobody is putting the organization at risk.
I like the way you guys have framed this as like when it's employee led, it's kind of like a should do instead of a have to, which naturally human nature, we prefer the should do's than the have to's, the top down stuff. With the type of conversation we started this with was pilots, not perfection, right? So the organizations that maybe don't have a Patty on staff that can help innovate and drive some of this culture and these frameworks, but want to do this, what does a leader do if they want to implement a pilots, not perfection culture within their organization? Where do they start?
I think
So
that,
yeah, go ahead, Catherine.
sorry, go ahead, Patty.
No, you start it. It's a, and then I'll kind of support that after you.
Yeah, I think if an organization wants to start that pilot culture, I think that it goes first and foremost towards what we've already talked about, which is creating the space for somebody to experiment safely. We've had conversations, and I think I've written some pieces as well about AI monitoring in organizations, and how some organizations want to like measure AI use or calculate things like productivity off of the way that their employees are engaging with AI. And I think in those scenarios, that's kind of the immediate trigger for people to start engaging in shadow AI usage. I think it's important to remember that there's no bad way to brainstorm. There's no bad way to work through a problem. I believe in iterating quickly, failing quickly and early, and just move it, like using all of that data to move forward. And so I think when you're trying to create that pilot structure, you have to start it from that psychological safety and culture standpoint. What you do here is not reflective of your value as a team member. It is not reflective of your intelligence or your overall productivity. It is, we're looking for you to experiment, and part of experimentation is failure. So I would say that's like the starting point is creating that psychological safety.
Like that. And Patty, you mentioned earlier the off ramp. So I think that that kind of all melds together. One of the things that I've appreciated, both from learning from Kathryn and Patty, obviously watching the types of things that you post, is the problem solving nature of a pilot, right? Like identifying a pain point that needs a solution. Kathryn, you did that with us at Flex when you started. You did kind of an assessment and asked, what are the challenges? What are the roadblocks? What gets in your way of being productive? What are some things that if AI could take this off your plate, you would have more time to do work of your highest and best use, and kind of ask those challenging questions of us and made us really think, okay, I want to be intentional. I don't want to just use ChatGPT and ask it questions all day. I want to be intentional with how we implement AI. That I think is also probably a great starting place for the pilots culture, Patty. I don't know.
It's pilot culture is I like, Catherine, when you talk about that psychological safety of things is your pilot culture is only going to be as good as your starting culture, your internal culture to begin with. It's if you have a culture where there are micromanagers and that's encouraged, a pilot culture is not going to work. People are, if there's a culture where someone is nervous to talk to their supervisor about something new because they're always told no, a pilot culture is not going to work. You need to create a structure within your company or organization that actually encourages ideas to be shared, like to your manager or even a skip step above, and people are okay talking about it. That means that you have to have very secure management who are not threatened by anyone who might be able to do something better than them or newer than them. Like my chief innovation officer, who is my boss, he is the most encouraging manager when it comes to not being threatened by anything. He's like, you are so far ahead when it comes to this stuff. Like, I can't even compete with you. He's like, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you how to take that, what you're good at, and kind of hone it in. And so he taught me about making the business case for these pilots, like really talk about the return on investment. So we can get a green light from everyone else in the C-suite. This is how you build a coalition of support within your organization. Okay, now that you got it here at your hypothesis, now this is how you go, and this is real change management. So it does really, like Kathryn said, it comes back to change management every single time when you're trying to figure out how do I set this culture up in a way where some people who might be skeptical of the pilot culture aren't the ones who end up saying, see, I was right, it wasn't going to work. You really have to, like, it's going to start first with your culture. And once you have your culture in a good spot, then you can do the pilot culture, because pilots are not going to be for every single organization or company. They just won't be by nature of management.
That's an excellent point. And another is just that the pilot doesn't have to be like all consuming, massive. It can be pretty small and narrow. What do you guys think about an organization that doesn't have a you, either one of you, right, to come in and help kind of drive that? If the pilot doesn't have to be something that's changing the business overnight. It can be pretty simple. Kathryn, what do you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think starting just with a defined pain point. I always, when I talk to people about AI, you know, and starting up with it, I tell them think about the task that you dread every week, or think about the parts of your job that you complain about to your family or to your spouse. Those are usually the easiest places to start and say, I'm experiencing this problem every single week. This is taking too long, or it's too difficult, or I'm having to involve too many people and it's hard to get our schedules aligned, all of that. Going and, experimenting with and piloting a potential AI solution for that pain point can give you a quick win that is not necessarily, high risk or a really high effort implementation. And I think too, what I find is really important with that pilot model is trying to, stack wins early. So when you're starting small, you're starting with something that has a defined pain point. You have a defined ROI that you want, or a particular outcome that you're looking to get from it. You build confidence quickly, and especially at an organization where you might not have a me or a Patti who's there championing AI and all of these new changes. Having those wins early on makes everybody have a collectively higher buy-in, because everybody likes to feel like they're succeeding at something in their job. Everybody likes to feel like they're winning at something in their job. And so I think that that's a great starting place. And once you get comfortability with those smaller ones, you can open the scope up a little bit and say, like, okay, we've addressed the low hanging fruit here, and we can go and now see about those bigger pain points that might be more complex.
I spoke about this at one of our events a couple weeks ago, and it was treat your approach to AI the same way you would approach choosing a vendor. Is you don't have to have the AI nerds who get really into all this. You need someone who focuses on ROI. And when you treat it like that, where it's how can we save time, talent, treasure, all of those things, then there's now a business case for getting into AI and seeing where it can improve processes, et cetera. And I tell people, I was like, once you identify that person or those people within the organization, then give them the CHIPS framework. Give them the CHIPS framework and start small. It's take one thing, name one challenge that you have, apply the CHIPS framework to it, and you will start creating a culture and a momentum of utilizing generative AI technology to help people within your organization. And once you start there, it will catch like fire and people will understand it. And it's okay, now let's move to the next thing. Now that we've saved some time, let's now fill that time with innovating something else. It's not now okay, now I can do something I've been wanting to doing. No, you're now going to use that time to innovate something that you've been doing. And now you saved a whole bunch of time. And then once you have a good amount of time that you've saved each week, I was getting between 60 and 70 hours of work done within a 40-hour work week because I spent a ton of time figuring out how to shorten the time it took me to do my regular tasks. And it was a bunch of them. And then when I got comfortable with it, it was like, okay, now I can start adding some new stuff in. And so it's the initial investment is going to be the part where people don't like it. But if you're like, AI innovation is as important as vendor choice. AI innovation is as important as vendor choice because it's going to have the same rate of return for you, if not more, because it touches literally every single business function within your organization.
Is fantastic. And I'm going to use all of this because like preach, Patty, preach. No, that's such a great point. I love the business case, the business use for implementation. From a personal perspective, when Kathryn started this with us, biz dev is a huge amount of the time that I spend as a business owner. And because of some of the systems that she taught me and then the time we've invested, there is so much more time to do the bigger picture aspects of biz dev because we have systems in place creating the RFPs and doing some of the tasks that were taking up so much of my time. And it feels like I have a completely different outlook on being a business owner just because of some of the time saved for the systems that we've put in place. So I think that kind of takes me to when we hear about AI and people watching this, people who pick up their morning newsletters, the morning paper, whatever, the headlines are all about, like we talked about earlier, AI is going to take your job, the robots are going to take over, all those things. But we also see headlines about women and women being slower to harness AI in the workplace for a variety of factors. Kathryn, you put out a great piece on just kind of what this looks like. Men are adopting it so much faster than women. So I love that it's 3 women on this episode talking about AI and the great things that y'all are doing. But let's talk a little bit about that specifically. Kathryn, we'll start with you just on what you're seeing with women approaching this a little differently and how we can bring them into the culture you guys are describing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of, women being left behind in AI adoption, for me, it stems from 2 factors. So one is that I think, I'm seeing women more hesitant to experiment, maybe more hesitant to fail. It can be intimidating to learn a new system that you've never touched before, especially too, if you have a colleague that maybe has shot ahead and really developed their knowledge quickly. If people are using it personally and at home, right, that's still development and learning that they're getting that you might not be getting. And so I think addressing that point ties back to, again, what we've touched on before, that psychological safety. So if we know that that is a hesitation that people are having in your organization, addressing it up front and being direct about the way that you want people to be thinking about AI, the way that you want them to be measuring its effectiveness, the way that you want them to be experimenting, and really encouraging that, as well as providing instruction and training for it. We've done training internally at Flex. I've done training externally for clients where even some of the basics for people that have been using it for years, like Patti, just the basics of prompting. And as you said at the start of this call, going back and forth with it, challenging it, asking it questions, correcting it if you don't think that it's correct or it doesn't have the right context on a particular ask. Those things seem foundational when you've been using AI for a really long time. But to most new users, that's revolutionary. They think that it's like Google. I would say the second piece that I'm seeing is some of the ethical conversations around AI utilization. It seems like, especially in some of the media that we've seen, that women are being held to a higher standard or more to account for those issues than we're seeing from men in the same spaces. And I think with that, all good AI implementation is ethical implementation. And I think we're not encouraging people to try and offload all aspects of their job to ChatGPT. Not that I think that that is possible for most people, regardless. We are using it as a thought partner. It is not just, I need a report written on this particular topic, generate it for me. It's, I'm oftentimes dictating to AI. I know what the ask is, but I have a lot of thoughts and I'm having difficulty organizing them. And so, how can I just talk back and forth with it and have it help me organize those thoughts all together? And so, I think knowing that there is a good and ethical way to implement AI, I would hope would help alleviate some of those concerns as well. And yeah, I think those are probably the two biggest factors that I've seen.
Yeah, it's I think women tend to think that they have more to lose in the workplace. Like you said, they're afraid to make mistakes. And so
Hmm.
women just tend to be more compliant and more risk averse, right? So I've spoken to several groups of women about this, and they are the only ones, and men, and they're the only ones who first bring up legal compliance and ethics. It's always no, we have to make sure that this is above board X, Y, and Z. I never think about that. It's like my parents raised me to be very much like, you're an independent lady. You don't have to worried about anything. I don't have children, right? I just have a husband and a dog. And so while I manage the home, right, I have a lot of mental load. I've never thought in any way like, "Oh, I need to work twice as hard and be twice as careful, etc." For me, I'm like, I could fail. It's not a big deal. I think it's because I got cut from basketball in 7th grade, and then I was on varsity by 10th grade, right? It was like, as long as you work hard, you're fine. Like, you're resilient. So I think that's one of the reasons why women are slow to go in anything like brand new. And
Hmm.
it's also the fact that many places are having their IT departments address the AI issue within their organizations and companies. And mostly men work in IT. That's like a fact.
Yes.
And people are treating it like it's an IT function, when in reality, generative AI, the type that we're talking about, not talking about agents, it's generative AI, the stuff that most of us would be able to harness, is, in my opinion, more of an HR function to really prepare the full workforce to
Yes.
do enablement and training. And so to me is that AI is actually a female forward technology
Yes.
that those of us who do have an exceptional mental load, that we're not just carrying the burden of what we do at work, but we also have the burden and privilege of what we do outside of our work day. So AI can actually multiply us and our capabilities. So to me, it's like, girl, do not get worried about the compliance side of it at work. Let's first start with your home life stuff. Like, let's start with it where it's personal and closer to you, where you don't actually care if people know what you're cooking for dinner that week and what you have to do grocery shopping, where you take a picture of what's in your fridge and you're like, please create me a menu and make me a shopping list for things that they sell at Costco. Keep it simple. I don't want to spend more than 30 minutes an evening making dinner. And it's like, I got you, girl. I got you. Right. And then it's, once you get comfortable there, it's now you understand where the guardrails are and where the walls are of the sandbox. Now start implementing that into your work life. And you understand where the return on investment needs to be. You know where, if women are working in HR and operations for the most part, or like programmatic and events roles,
Yes.
is those are the places where we can use AI to save a ton of time. It's a talk about like real, efficiency, is that get excited about saving yourself time and don't be a martyr about it. Don't be like, no, they're going to take my job away. It's like, no, they're not. It's your job will change a little bit, but you're going to be able to save time on this other stuff so you can start. How many people, like, working on strategy and on the business is such a luxury today. You spend so much time in the business.
Yes.
I wish I just had 5 hours a week or even an hour where I could just sit and think. Is that this technology gives us the ability to do so. So when you alleviate some time on your calendar, no one has to know that you have 5 extra hours now, right? Instead, you now get to think about what you're working on instead of being in it. So to me,
And I
like, really latch onto it.
And I think too that, one of the areas that I find that women excel most at professionally is development. Development management of other people, all of that. And I think at its best, the way that you're engaging with AI is no different. So, treating it like a thought partner. I've joked that, I'm treating it like an intern, right? You have to teach it. You have to give it relevant materials. You have to give it feedback. You have to give it instruction. And I think knowing that, where, the best way to engage with the AI embodies a lot of skills that I see already in most women in the workforce, I makes it a bit more approachable and makes it feel less scary and intimidating. Treat it like you are developing an actual person, treat it like you are engaging with an actual junior team member. And I feel like that is an easier mindset for, a lot of women who are starting with it to grasp.
I named mine Gary. So my ChatGPT is Gary, and Gary and I go way back now, right? It's like Gary's all my personal life stuff and anything human like, right?
Hmm.
I just need to like chit chat. It's like, Gare Bear, listen to me. I got X, Y, and Z. But Claude is my much more professional builder
Right.
partner. It's like my true partner in doing stuff. Claude is the person who's on Gary's on my team, my ChatGPT. When you said development, and I know you're talking about the development of people, it actually triggered me as that a lot of mission-driven orgs are watching this and they have a robust development department, robust team. That is all human relationships. Development is the ability to have a relationship with another human being, hear them, hear what their motivations are, and be able to deliver and connect those connections. Inserting a computer, a robot, an AI entity into that process is going to feel very odd. And you have a lot of information that you should not share in the open, right? We don't need donor information out there. But one of the great things that you can do is create personas based on your
Hmm.
donors. Like, what type of donors do you have? Now let's create personas and let's test some messaging out on these personas. And this truly becomes, like you said, Kathryn, if you treat it more like a person, it's give it the person, you will feel the more human aspect of using it because you're not relying on it. You are relying on your expertise in your domain to be able to get more out of your own thinking is the way that I
Absolutely.
would say it.
I think we could do an entire episode just on this portion of the conversation,
I know.
the human-centered AI. Ladies, I know we've gone over time. Thank you again for your patience with our technical difficulties earlier. To recap for everyone, we started talking about the hesitancy and the fears. I think both ladies made a great point on culture and that it starts with a healthy culture in the first place. Then you can bring AI into the culture with that attitude of pilots, not perfection. We can pick a pain point, have the employees who are excited about it, who are probably already doing it anyway or doing it at home, leverage that for you, and then grow from there. And then as always, humans at the forefront of AI and understanding that aspect. That was such a great point. Patti, if people want to reach out to you if they have questions or if you've said something that sparked an idea, how can people get in touch with you?
On the off-campus fan boards. No, I
Yeah,
had to. We talked about it. We had to sneak in an
you
off-campus
did.
reference. You can email me prausch Rausch at naw.org. Happy, just put the Flex Live in the subject line and happy to chat. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Patti Rausch. You can find me there. I follow Flex, so if you wanna look that up, and I think I'm tagged in the event page. But happy to have any conversation. I love helping people. The purpose of life is to find out what you're good at, and the meaning of life is to give that talent away. And I truly believe in that. So I'm really thankful for being able to join you both today.
We are so thankful that you did. I will put your information in the comments, Kathryn, yours as well. And just, follow both ladies on LinkedIn because that is truly how I have actually gotten comfortable myself with AI and kind of following people who are talking about it and sharing what they've learned, what works, what doesn't work. So they're both great follows on that front. And stay tuned for the next episode of Flex Live. But I plan on having you both back on very soon to dig in deeper on some of the stuff we talked about today and potentially an off campus only conversation. Once I
Perfect.
finish the series, we can dig in on that. But thanks,
No
everyone.
spoilers. Yes. Happy to. Thank you.